Hey everybody, I'm Jeremy Siskind. I'm the author of Playing Solo Jazz Piano, Solo Standards for Piano, Jazz Piano Fundamentals. I don't know what accent. I don't really do accents. Volumes 1, 2, and there is a volume 3, which is off somewhere. It's taking a vacation. I give all my books vacation days. In the last installment of my jazz voicing series, we talked about how to create shared hands voicings. And shared hand voicings are these nice, rich voicings in which you play the bass in the left hand pinky, the melody in the top few note fingers of the right hand, and then reach with both of your hands towards the middle in order to cover the rest of the notes of the chord that you want to play. And I mentioned that I use this for ballads, but also, as I'll show you today, we can use it for all kinds of other types of tunes. So let's pick a tune and I'll show you example. Let's do Alone Together. So here's some shared hands voicings. So you can see that both my hands are fully extended towards the middle at most points. And this is kind of the reality. Now, I would never suggest that anybody reach in ways that are uncomfortable or are hurting them. But having your hands mainly nice and open is going to be a key to using this technique. So, last session, can I call them sessions? Last video, last installment, we wrote out these voicings for what a difference a day makes. I'm saying we, it was mostly me that did the work, if I'm being honest. So how can we take these voicings, with a lot of the other voicings, we're obviously comping or we're harmonizing a melody, but what do we do with these voicings? So the simplest thing that I do when I have my students do is that we create what I call like a repeated quarter note ballad. And we take just one of the notes of the voicings and we start forming texture and rhythm with one of the notes. I call it repeated quarter notes because I'm mostly just going to reinforce the quarter note. So watch my hand. It's going to be mostly the left hand thumb that's going to repeat. And there's a lot more information on how to do this in Playing Solo Jazz Piano. So So I'm doing it without any bells and whistles really now. But of course, there's a lot that we could add to that texture. We could add things on the extremes of the piano. We could add some inner voice movement. We could add some reharmonization. So it could sound, down the road. Add bells and whistles around it. We could add texture, color, other sorts of things, other sorts of orchestrations. We could also divide these up in some different ways. Like, it could be. Jarrett does things in this category. Not exactly like that, I don't think. But, you know, creating a little bit more emotion using some eighth notes, or that's filling in from beat 1 to 2 and 3 to 4, but it could be from 2 to 3 and 4 to 1. Most of that action is going to be in the left hand because I don't want my right hand to be too tied up in order that it's not playing the melody really clearly. It could also be all eighth notes. Okay, so we could add texture through, I guess we could call it arpeggiation. The other kind of ballad style I talk about a lot with this kind of voicing is what I call the start-stop rubato ballad, where we play... So I'm playing a phrase and then I'm commenting on it with something more improvisational in between. And that might not use literally the voicings that we wrote out, or it might not use every one of the voicings that we wrote out. We might have to add some more, we might have to change them based on the context. But basically, these are still shared hand voicing. Whenever I'm playing the melody, I'm still using shared hands voices. Now, we could also comp in a more traditional way, and I have two ways that I think about this. Maybe I'll come up with more than two, but I think about the melody being by itself and everything else being together. So... it's kind of a call and response approach. It doesn't have to be. It could be... Right, so here I'm comping on the end of 2 and 4. Takes pretty good coordination because your right hand is having to do two different things, right? I'm having to go. Of course, I might choose how to phrase the right hand based on, making it work with the left, with the bottom part. But I still do have to have really two different articulations going on in the same hand at the same time. Piano's hard. Or we put the bass and the melody kind of doing their normal thing, although I would usually just have the bass holding here, and then I'd fill in the inner part. Of melodic interest in the bass. You hear and this is at least related to that insides and outsides approach, I've heard it called, where you play the melody and then the melody and the bass together and then the inside part. Because this melody is a little it's unpredictable. It's not like someday my prince will come. This isn't always going to be insides and outsides, but here the insides and outsides are kind of doing different. The two outside voices are doing their own thing, and the insides are all together. So there is some logic to thinking about that as an insides and outsides approach. Listen one more time with that in mind. And of course, these are not totally separate things. If I'm playing, the bottom parts all is one thing, occasionally I might use a bass note and have that hold out, and vice versa. Now, one last thing that I want to mention here is that as we form these voicings, it's kind of a cool opportunity to look at each voice and create some movement. And I'll show you immediately that two of my favorite tricks are on a minor 7th chord to move from the major 7th and then resolve to the minor 7th. So on this F minor 7, I go from E natural to E flat. You heard me do that probably 5 times in the last few versions. And then on a dominant 7th chord, I love the old traditional 4-3 suspension. And because we're playing everything, it's kind of, I don't want to say easy, but it's easier to see how these voice leading tricks would work. On that B flat 7, you have to avoid the melody notes. But I could do that same thing potentially on G minor 7. I could do the major 7th leading to the minor 7th. And then maybe, it might be a little weird with the sharp 9, I could do another 4-3 suspension here. So that would be an F leading to an E. There's a lot about this in the book Playing Solo Jazz Piano, but as you hear me create more chords, some of what I'm doing is I'm reharmonizing. Some of what I'm doing is just simply these sorts of motions of taking one note and displacing it. It's too fast in the 4th measure at this tempo at least. So it's not all like coming up with new harmony from scratch. Hope you like that. Hope that you learned a couple things about how we're using these shared hand voicings. And yeah, all this information, if you're interested, is in Playing Solo Jazz Piano. Look at it wave like a flag. Why don't you say something about a flag? If you've watched this far, I appreciate you watching. I think, unless I change my mind, next week is going to be the last week of this voicing series. Try not to cry, but do tune in next week for a grand finale. See ya, everybody.